Hello and welcome to the JewelleryMaker Academy. My name's Alison Tarry and today we're going to be looking at a seed bead stitch called brick stitch. So it's all about this type of stitch. It's very versatile. It's very closely related with another stitch called Peyote. In fact, if you turn one through 90 degrees, they're identical, but the way you make them is quite different. So we're going to explore ways how we do brick stitch, where we can use it, and what possibilities you have with it, because it's a lovely stitch to do. It starts off, we're actually going to also look at something called your ladder stitch, because it's based on, you start off with a ladder stitch and then it's based on that and it's built up. Ladder stitch works with a number of stitches as a foundation layer. So it's then all built on top of that. So you just have this base layer. So what do we need to get going? So we need some scissors, some bead weaving thread, and some seed beads. You can do brick stitch with pretty much any size of bead, seed bead, anything you like. You can have 16mm beads and you can still do brick stitch. You might use a bit thicker thread. So, but it's predominantly used in seed beading. So that's how we're going to do it. So I'm also going to have a look at here how we read a pattern. So when you have a pattern, it can be a very basic pattern or it can be an extremely complicated pattern, but it works the same. So here's two patterns for two of the pieces we're going to be looking at, and this is brick stitch. So for brick stitch, we orientate it this way, and you start here and you work your way either up or down, it doesn't matter which, a page, and you can expand and decrease. That is one of the big pluses about brick stitch, is this ability to easily expand and decrease, which other seed beading stitches don't necessarily have. Now, like I've said, this is very closely related to peyote. But the thing is, with peyote, you can do exactly the same pattern, but you would turn it this way round and you work this way across. So you have a straight line either side on your peyote, and you have a straight top and bottom, but this in and out on your brick stitch, except when you're decreasing. So to read it, it's literally one bead it's very easy to read. So you're just going along one row and each brick is a stitch. And then when you go up, they're slightly offset, but it's still only one per row. So you're not having to juggle up and down or anything. You can put a piece of paper on and follow that through and just cover up each row as you go. It's a very easy stitch to follow like that. You can make patterns. You can do pretty much anything. So you can make patterns. So if I just slightly move that out of the way, that there is the necklace. There is this one here. So that's this pattern here, and there isn't a row missing. That is so you can put your little loop to attach a bail to. So that is that necklace pattern, and we're going to go through that as we follow it. So now we know what we need. Now we've had a look at patterns. Let's get started with the first chapter. In this chapter, so we're going to learn how to do ladder weave. Now, ladder weave is the foundation layer, if you like, for a few seed bead stitches. You can use it as a standalone, but more often than not, it is used as that foundation layer because it's so good at it. But you can if you want use it, particularly with bugles and things like that. It can be used as a standalone. But for our purposes with the brick stitch, it's the foundation. So each of these pieces have got a row of brick stitch on them. So if you look at the tassel earrings there in the middle, you can see the join between where the brick stitch part, the triangle finishes at the top and then you start the tassel. Well, that first row there is your foundation layer. You can't see it in the others as easily as that because it's blended in. So what is ladder weave? So ladder weave is basically your beads form the rungs of a ladder. It's something that's used in seed beading, it's used in beading, it's used a lot of places. So we're going to start off and I'm going to put on a stopper bead. So a stopper bead does what it says on the tin. You put it on, you loop around and you go back through it. It's just to make sure things don't fall off. So we're then going to put on 2 beads. So I'm going to actually pick up one of the patterns as I do this. So I'm going to put 2 beads on and then I'm going to go back through, so loop around and go back through those beads. So we're going to loop around. Now when you pull it, they stay that way, they stay parallel. We want them actually to be next door to each other. So I'm just going to pull those out so that they sit side by side. So you're just going to tweak those out. Now initially your ladder weave is going to look a little bit like a zigzag. Don't worry, because that will resolve. So we're going to open those up so they sit side by side. Then we're going to add the next rung. So I'm going to add a blue one. And I'm going back down through the previous bead, being careful not to loop my thread. So you can see how this one now sits next door to that one. I'm going to go back up through that blue one. And then I'm going to pick up my next bead and go up now, because whichever way the thread comes out of, you're looping round and going in the same direction. So pull your needle through and they start sitting. If you encourage it, they'll sit next to each other fairly easily, but like I say, it looks a bit zigzaggy. So I'm going to do another few of those. If you leave it as it is, you can brick stitch onto it, but if you don't get, like anything, if you don't get your foundation layer right, the rest of it won't sit right. So if you imagine building a house and your foundation layer is a bit wibbly wobbly, your whole house is going to end up wibbly wobbly, because you're going to have trouble sort of matching walls. Your roof's not going to sit flat because every bit's going to be at a different height. So you've got to get your foundation right, and then you'll find the rest of it will drop into place. So you're going round each one. Each time you put one on, you're coming back through your bead, ready to accept another one. You don't have to, it doesn't matter which direction you do, pick it up, you're going following the direction of that thread and then back through that end one. So let's say this is the length we want. It's not very tidy, it's a bit floppy, so we're now going to go back and just go up and down through each one. So you're literally just alternating, but as you do, you're pulling those beads into line. So you'll see them start to, can you see that already? That's starting to firm up and be a little bit more organized. If you imagine the army, they've all been wandering around and they've been called to attention, so they all start, you know, lining up, making sure they're the right distance apart. Well, that's what we're doing here. We're telling them all to get in line and behave, and because you've got this other thread going through, what's happening is it's pulling those beads into position. So now we get this beautiful, straight, fairly sturdy ladder. As you can see, it's nice and symmetrical, and you can see now the whole ladder weave thing. So you've got your sides of your ladder with the thread going up each side, and these form the rungs of the ladder as you go along. And that's your foundation that you're going to be using for your beading. So for now, let's go on to the next chapter. In this chapter, we're going to have a look at flat brick stitch. So when we say flat brick stitch, what do we mean? Basically flat, so it's not tubular, it's not circular, it is a flat sheet that you can create. So on this example, it's only got 3 rows, but that's still flat brick stitch. It could have 23 rows, it could be a square, but basically without the decreasing and increasing per se. So you're keeping it even. So I've got a ladder set up as we looked at making in the previous chapter, and you can see you've got the black thread, which makes it really clear. Those are your uprights of your ladder, and then the beads form the rungs of the ladder. So when you're doing flat, you want to keep the same. Now, to do a vertical brick stitch, it won't go straight up. It goes straight horizontally, but it goes every other, as if you were making a wall. So if you make a wall, what you have to do with the wall is actually break the last brick in half to get a vertical line. We don't break beads in half, so we have it going in and out and in and out. So for the first one, I'll do it in the other colour. I'm going to go through that first thread bridge. So when we're doing brick stitch, what we're doing, we're not going down through another bead when you've picked up your beads. Normally you go bead to bead to bead, sometimes diagonally, sometimes straight across. With brick stitch, we actually go underneath this thread bridge. So we're going underneath that black rather than into the bead. And then we're going to form this next row. So when you pull that through, they'll go into all sorts of funny positions. You just want them to sit side by side. And you can see this sticks out. We're going to pop that down through the previous row. I know I've just said we don't tend to go through. The start of each row, we don't go through there yet. The start of each row, we've come down, gone under the thread bridge. We're going to go back up through that bead, down through the next one and through the diagonal one below it. So it's not directly below, it's diagonal. To pull that and then go back up through the next one and through the bead. Now that's the only time in the row at the start where you go through here generally when we're doing just flat. So now we're going to carry on with just going through that thread bridge, back up through the bead, Be careful when you're going back up. It's very easy if you've got it close to actually slip back up through there, through the thread bridge. So you need to make sure you miss that thread bridge when you go up through that other bead. So we're going to go back up through that bead. You want to, your tension wise, you want to be tight enough for it to hang together. I tend to bead quite tight tension. You can have it looser than this, but it's got to be cohesive. So long as it's cohesive, that's not an issue. Then we're going to come back up through. Each one you're going along, and as you pull through, it's forming this sheet of, helps if you put your bead on. There we go. Back up through the next bead. If you ever get a point where you've made a mistake and you can't work out how to back out of it, you've tried going back underneath that thread bridge, but it's getting caught, don't keep trying to go through, just take your needle off and pull your thread through from the other side. Don't try and sew back through. Try it once, and if it doesn't happen, then don't try. So we come to the natural end of your row, and you'll see what I mean by them being every other. So each of these beads sits across the join. So when you come to the end, the gold row, the first row, is sticking out beyond that blue, and likewise the blue is sticking beyond that gold. So when we turn over and start again, we're going to put our 2 on, go through that first bridge, back up through your first bead, and down. Back up through that second bead and into the upper row, pull it through. So you're getting quite a few threads going through here. if you find you're having trouble pulling your needle through, check the size of your needle. You can get a finer needle. This one's a 10 for the larger size beads. If I was working with a size 11 bead or smaller, then I'd use a finer needle, and likewise a finer beading thread. So that's where your changes in beading thread and your changes in needle really come to the fore. So if you find when you're coming through it's snagging because you've been through those first ones, go through a few times, then that's when you want to look at changing the size of your needle or changing the size of your thread, or possibly both. For this is a £10 thread and a size 10 needle, and these are size 8 beads, and they work perfectly well together. But every now and then, where you get to one where you've been through 3 or 4 times round, you'll find it's a little bit tight, snug, and you've got to give it a bit of a tug. Don't ever try and force it, because bear in mind these are glass beads, and if you do have to put too much force on it, then what will happen is you will crack the glass. So that's doing your next row, and as you can see now, the gold has come back out and is short there. So if you wanted to make the ring that we've done, that one has got 21 beads on. You can do your first row, put it round your finger, see if they meet. If they do meet, then that's fine. If they don't meet, then just add another couple on your ladder. And then to fasten it up, if you see, if I pull these round, they will just fit snugly in, and you can just sew through these a couple of times and you won't see where the join is. So that's how you would join those into your ring. But that is flat peyote, and now we'll go on to the next chapter. In this chapter, we're going to really explore increasing and decreasing with your brick stitch. As you can see from this pendant, there isn't a straight line in it. They're all angled, they're all one bigger, one smaller than the rest. It goes in and out really, really easily. This is brick stitch forte. This is to me, this is what it was made for. It really does this sort of stuff really easily. So that pendant is based on this pattern. You can start anywhere you like in this pattern. Because of the earrings I made to go with this, I've actually started at that row there. So that first blue row there. And this is what we did when we made our ladder earlier. We've started off with 2 golds, 1 blue, 3 golds, 1 blue, 2 golds. Okay, and that's as easy as it is to follow the pattern. So as you see, the next row, whichever direction I go in, I'm not going to follow the pattern because I want to show you increase and decrease. So the next row is going to be a decrease row, whichever direction I go. I've started at the widest so that I can decrease, and then I'll increase again, decrease and increase. But it is so easy to do that I don't know why anyone would do any other stitch to do this, because this is made for it. So how do we do? I'm going to start with decrease, because brick stitch does it naturally. It doesn't do the same, as we said before. It's all on one level, then the sides go in and out. If you're doing a straight brick stitch, a flat brick stitch, basically you shift, just like you were if you're building a wall. They all go over the join, so your next bead shifts one, then it shifts the other way, then it shifts the other way. When you're doing a decrease, basically we want to go over that one, so we're going to go, as we started before, we're going to pick up 2, and I'm going to carry on for a little bit with that pattern. So I'm going to pick up 2 gold, miss that first bridge, and I'm going to go under that second bridge. Okay, then I'm going to come back up. So this is the start of every row you do. The positioning is slightly different. So for a normal every other row, or a decreased row, you're going to start this way, but the principle is the same. So you've gone up, wrapped around like we did in the flat chapter, and then back up through the next one. We're now ready. We've got our corner in. If you do it without that extra loop round, you can, but this bead on the end tends to start wandering, and the ends become a little bit unstable. It will work, it will hold together, but it doesn't look as neat, whereas that clamps down really nice and tightly and it looks lovely and neat. So now we're going to do our next one, and as before, we're going to carry on along the row. So we're going to go all the way to the end, and I'm going to follow this pattern. So I'm going on this row here. So it's 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So it's nice and easy to show 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So it's nice and easy to do. I'll move that out of the way because then you can see the bead. So 2, 1, then I'm going to pick up 1, through there, and another one. You're just moving along to the next bridge and up. Then we've got the blue one. Diagonals are great with brick stitch. Straight lines, if they're horizontal, are great. If they're vertical, they're less so, because they, as you can see, if you wanted to go up like that, it would zigzag its way up. It's not able to do a vertical line, and very much able to do a horizontal line. So, and a diagonal line's absolutely easy peasy, because that's its natural way. So we've come to the last bridge. Right, now as you see, because we've come to the last bridge, we've got nowhere else to go. We're decreased automatically. So if we do the same again, turn it over, I find it easier to turn over and work in one direction. Doesn't matter if you're left or right-handed, whether you're going that way or that way, you can just zigzag across if you're comfortable with doing that. I always work left to right, or usually work left to right. So I'm going to pick up another 2. Come on. Go under there, and you'll see that you've automatically decreased again. So we come under there, pop back through that first one, down to the previous level. Doesn't matter where they go, once you pull that, they come back into line, and we're ready to go. And we've got that decrease happening. So easy to do. This is why you'll see a lot of fringe earrings with a triangle at the top, and basically they're all brick stitch, because it's perfect for it. And you can do, because it's a nice easy pattern to follow, you can do some quite intricate patterns, and you're just going line by line as if you were doing, say, a knitting pattern, or even a cross stitch pattern. So one of those, then a blue one, and then we've got our next decrease automatically happening. Here we go. So, as you can see, that's your decrease happening. Now, I'm going to veer away from the pattern because I'm going to show you how to increase. So, obviously, you'd keep going with this all the way till you get to the top. Sorry, that's the bottom. All the way to get to the top. Once you've got to the 2 beads at the top, just pop a little bit of French wire or a wire end guardian around the top. It just protects your cord and gives you a nice loop so that you can then put a bail or a jump ring through to attach it. If you come straight through the bead, you can carry on and bead onto something else, but then to attach it to wire or to a jump ring, then it starts, then it with the movement you can get fraying. So if you've put that French wire in, like we've got at the top of the pendant here, you can just see at the top there, you've got that little horseshoe of French wire, and through there is your thread. So that thread's never going to be worried about the jump ring that's there. It's not going to get rubbed. It's going to sit protected in its little cocoon. So it's very secure. Right, so we're going to do an increase. So how are we doing an increase? Right, so up till now we've gone through the second one. To increase, we're going to go through that first one. Now when we put those two down, you can see what's happening. Automatically it's going wider. So the first bead, instead of sitting over the first join, is hanging out over the edge. And that's as easy as it is to increase. So I'm going to go back up through there to secure that one, and then when you come down, because you've got to go down through there, you do exactly the same. You go down through that first bead on the previous row, back up through the one next to it, and then you're good to go. So we'll do that again. We'll just open this, and this is great. You can do chevrons. You can make these, so you could have this going to a point, then widen out and go to a point, widen out and go to a point. The patterns you can do are absolutely amazing. It's great for stars. Like I say, I do, if you do any unusual shapes, then you can very easily use this technique for increasing and decreasing anywhere that it's awkward. So anywhere where you've got a straight line of beads, you can add on and brick stitch to. So it could be a herringbone stitch, it could be peyote stitch, anything like that. Now we've come to the end, okay? So we've gone through the last bridge. We're going to pop our needle up through there, but we haven't got another bridge to go through. So we're going to pick up there, go down through that last bead into the end bead below. So that gives us our overhanging bead. But now we've got to get back, so we're coming up through that bead there to start the next row. So we're going to move along one, I know it seems like we're going away, but we're going to move along that bead, up through the next one and out through the third one of the new row. So we've gone up through the second and we're coming out through that third. Why are we coming out through the third? Because, let me pull that through. You can then go down through that second and back up through that one, and now you're in the correct position for turning around and doing your next row, but you've got your increase on each side. So I'll just do that one again. We're going to increase again. We're going to pop these in. If you wanted to do a big increase, so let's say you need to do an arm on a jumper for a jumper shaped pendant. Come on, get out of the way, you. Right, there we go. Then what you would do is ladder stitch on the end of here, and then you just bead back along your ladder. So let me just finish this increase for you there. Back through and back up through there. So if you finish this row off and you want to do multiples of increase, so let's do that. We'll just go along to the end. It's very easy to attain that by just increasing your ladder, and your ladder you can do as many or as few as you want. So you know, you can add on another 2, you can add on another 20, you can add on another 200. It is very easy to do, as you saw from the ladder stitch chapter. So we're just going to go along here to the end, and then we'll add on 2 for our ladder and then start the new row. But we need to add on the low. I've missed my pattern, I've missed my blue out, but it doesn't matter. Come on. I'm going to take that stopper bead off for now because he's getting caught. Now you've got going, that's actually not going anywhere. Up we come. Right, so I haven't increased this yet. I'm going to put the last one on, but if we want another 2 beads on here, we're going to start on this row. So we're increasing. The row we want to increase is the row we're stitching on at the moment, if that makes sense. So we're going to come up through here. So that's a single increase. I'm going to come down, go back up. Right, so we're now in the position we were in with the ladder. We can just add on for a ladder stitch. We go up through there, back down, down through the next one, and back up. And now you can see you've got that platform. You've done your first floor extension and you want a balcony, so you've now built out for that balcony, and you can carry on beading on top of it. And it's just the same because you've already got your thread bridge. If you want to secure that, then go back through, but you're going to have to come back out to that bead. So it's just one more loop through, and that is now much firmer and ready to go. And you just carry on beading as you have been. Whether you want to increase on it, decrease on it, you could come out and then start going down again. So as I said, you can start doing these arrowheads because you can come out to there and start decreasing. So that is how you increase and decrease. You can do it for single pendants, you can do it for a whole strip, you could make a choker out of it. You can be doing a rabbit and have the ears that you've got to suddenly increase because it turns out and goes that way. So whatever you want to use that for, it's so easy to do your increasing and decreasing. Now you've got that, we're going to go on to the next chapter. During this chapter, we're going to have a look at adding a fringe to our brick stitch. So one of the most popular forms of seed bead earrings you'll see, if you look on the internet, is a fringed pair of earrings of this sort of ilk. They can be all one size, they can slope down one size, they can match together, so you can, and you'll see them where you've got a picture that's carried down into the fringe, which looks amazing. So it's all about adding depth but also flow. So that you'll always get the move. They're very often a long length, like an opera length, or shoulder dusters. So, but you're always starting with this little brick stitch triangle. So I've kept the theme from the earlier chapter, and I've done my brick stitch using the pattern. Started off with my foundation row here, and I've just decreased my way round to the last 2 and then popped my loop that will then affix to the shepherd's hook. So that's all nice and easy, what we've covered so far. So we're actually going to be adding the fringe to our bottom layer. So technically we're adding the fringe to the ladder weave, but it's all kind of they're classed as a brick stitch earring. So we've come out of here, I've fetched my thread from the top, added a couple of loops in just to anchor it and fix it so that every time we put a fringe on we're not pulling that. So this is now fixed, and we're going to start adding our fringe. You can just keep the fringe, you can make these earrings in completely the same colour, and just add a fringe in the same colour and they will still look beautiful. Like I said, you can do patterns of these and make the most ornate patterns you can think of, especially if you start using smaller beads. So these are again with the 8/0s. If you start doing this with an 11 or a 15, then the more beads you can have, the more intricate your pattern. So if you use these, it would look like a very pixelated picture. It would be, you know, big blocks, so you wouldn't get the detail. As soon as you go down to the smaller sizes, for the same size there, you're adding the number of beads you can fit in. So obviously you can add more and more design in. So how do we go about this? So we've got our thread coming from anyone. You can start anywhere. I tend to start at one side, and I'm going to have these tapering. So I've decided what length I want my center one. My center one is 22 beads plus 1 at the bottom, and I've gone in a graduation of 2 beads down each time. So I'm starting off with a 14 bead at the end plus the extra bead. So the extra bead, there's different ways of finishing the bottom. You could add a drop to it, a pip. You could add a gemstone drop. You could add, I've just got a little very simple stop bead on the end, or you could add 3 beads and do a little piqué on the bottom. So whatever happens, you've got to do something on the bottom to stop those beads falling. And you want to do it in a way that doesn't necessarily show the thread, or at least doesn't show a lot of the thread. So if you just went back up over one of those beads, you'd see the thread going on the outside of the bead. So you turn the last bead. So we're going to add on. So if I'm going to add on, I'm going to minimize it. I'll add 6 on, and then I want my extra 1. I'll do it in a different color so that it will stand out. So I'm going to add my 6 beads on, slide them down, and then I'm going to ignore that blue one and go back up through those 6 and through that top bead. So I'm going to hold those, pull it up through, and when I get near, I tend to put it flat because I find it easier flat. Put it on there and just hold. You don't want to pull that really, really tight, because you can see how these start getting out of line. You want them to sit flush and comfy without being pulled tight. So that's now set in there. You're going to take your thread, go down through the next bead without pulling that extra much, and we're now going to put 8 on. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and our 1 blue. So you can see on this blue it turns sideways. Actually, I'm not going to put that blue one on for a minute. I'm going to show you the other way. So we've added our 8. The smaller the beads, obviously you're going to get closer. So with an 11 or a 15, the beads start getting closer and closer together. I know that's silly because you've got the beads are right next to each other, but they tend to sort of gap a little bit, and the smaller beads do it less. So I'm going to show you. So that's the simple ending, just by popping on a bead and ignoring it and going back up through. Those beads now sit in place. Thanks very much. And you can't really see the thread. You can do the same with a gemstone. If you do it with a drop, you can come down, go through the drop and back up, but you will see the bead thread. If you go through a big bead on the bottom, you're going to have to put a stop on, so you'd still end up going through a little bead. You can make this a smaller bead, which you'll see less. You've got to make sure that you can't go back up through, so it's got to be a decent sized smaller bead. I'd go 1 down, so if I was doing this with an 8, I'd have an 11 bead. If I was doing it with an 11, I'd use a 15 bead, just to give you that distinction. So the other method I've suggested for ending is the picot edging, and we're going to add on 3 beads. So I've added the 3 blue beads on. It's very easy to do. Then you're going to ignore those 3 beads and go back up. So on that one we've ignored the 1. This time we're ignoring all 3 and going back up. And what happens is you get this little triangular formation happening, and you can just have that at the end of each one. So there are a lot of choices with this. You can have all of them the same length if you want. You can have a flat fringe. You can have a graduated fringe with a V, which mimics the other side of the diamond, or you can have a tapered fringe. The choices and the possibilities are great, but just remember, when you're pulling them up, gently does it. You don't want to pull that so that it's distorted and tight, but likewise you don't want to have it so that you get gapping at the top. So nice and easy, ease it up, and then as soon as you feel or see it hit the top, that's when you stop pulling. Go to the next one and then you're off again. And that's how you add your fringes to your earrings. So in this chapter, we're going to look at tubular brick stitch. It is what it says on the tin. You create a tube and then you brick stitch around it. So we're starting off with our trusty ladder weave. I've got 6 beads on this, and that gives us a tube, surprisingly enough, the size of this bangle, because you'd think that's going to be a lot smaller. That looks quite chunky. If I put my hand in there, so you can see it just looks, it doesn't look like this tube is going to make, this ladder is going to make this tube, but it does. I've got a mandrel here. This is purely as an aid. You can roll up some scrap paper, use a knitting needle. It just helps you get started, because whenever you're doing anything like this tubular, the first ones you've got nothing to get hold of, so it's quite difficult. So if you can use a mandrel, then do. Like I say, it can be anything so long as it's round and it's even, rather than something that is a big taper. And the back end of a crochet hook is often good, things like that. So we're going to do this little pattern. That's what that is. But as it's done round, so we've got 6 beads, and this pattern looks like a flat brick stitch pattern, because the sides are going zigzagging their way up. That is a flat pattern. But we're going to be doing it in 3D, so we're going to do it round, but you can't show a pattern round, if you see what I mean. You can't show the 3D, so we open it out. If this was peyote and you were doing it this way, you could roll that up and zip it up. As brick stitch, you can do it flat, and then you can tuck it all up. The difference being, it's a lot harder to then meet all the sides and juggle it. It's easier if you're doing it as a circular. You can just keep going for as long as you want. And as you can see, this is just a bangle. There's no clasp on it. It's just a single fit bangle, and they're just great fun to wear. You can slip them on, wear them. They're fab. So we're starting off, like I say, this is 6 beads, so it grows quite quickly. I mean, you can do one of these in 2 or 3 hours and you're done, which is brilliant for seed beading. So we're going to start off with our ladder. Just pull those tight. Now when you've got your ladder, you've got your flat bit, we're then going to curl it to make our round. So I'm just going to go back up through that. My thread's coming out of this one. I'm going to go through the next one, pull that into a round. Thread that side. There we go, and go back down. So now we've got our tube. Now as you can see, you could actually hold it like that if you're comfortable holding it like that. I've got hold of the starting tail. Then you could brick stitch like that, but it's difficult to hold, and you can't, if you're pushing on here, it's not very good, so you end up having to do that. So pop it on a mandrel, and then all becomes so easy. So we've come up through this one. We're now going to do brick stitch. It is quite easy. You don't have to worry too much about the start. You're going to put a couple of beads on. Don't go through that one. Skip one and go through the next one. So why would you do that? Why wouldn't you do it the same way as you do, say, a flat? You can. This will give you a slight twist to it, which I quite like. If you do it in the first one, it will be straight. If you do it in the second one, you'll get a slight twist. But you've got to go through, whichever one you go through, first or second, go through your bridge, up through your next layer, come down through that first bead, and then you're going to go diagonally. It becomes slightly harder to demo it when it's on this, but it's a lot easier to do. So you're going to come back down through there. So it's not the one you went up through, it's the one next to it. So I'm going to come down through there, pull that tight, and you can see by pulling that, it's pulling that so that they're now parallel. So it works exactly the same as it did when you were doing it flat. So you pull that up, and then you're ready for the next one. And now you're going through your bridge. Now obviously if you've got a mandrel in the way, you can't come from over here, but you can come round the side and still get in there fairly easily. It's not a massive juggle, it's not massively out of the way, and then you can go up through there. Now the use of the mandrel will also give you something else. If you tend to bead with a tight tension and you want something slightly slacker to do a more pliable bangle, then use a slightly bigger mandrel and keep going, because what will happen is it will force it slightly wider, so you won't be able to pull it so tight. So you can see here there's a slightest gap there. So as I go round and build this, it will only pull it as tight as that mandrel will go. So I'm going to pick up the next one, go through underneath and back up. So I'm going to do a complete row, and I've done it all the same colour. Reading the pattern is again slightly different. It depends on your pattern. If you've got, you can have a spiral going on, and that's easy to see because you can automatically see where your next bead is. So we're coming to that one that's quite gappy. I could change it for a smaller mandrel, but I'm quite happy to use it so we've got a slightly looser one. So I've come up through my last bead. Now there is no connection between the start bead and the end bead, so we're going to go down through that bead from the start just to connect those through, and then back up through that last bead added. So now you've got a complete and connected starting position. If you're going to do it on the mandrel all the way through and you're using something like this which has got an end, you'd get to there and you wouldn't be able to do any more. That's probably big enough to do a bracelet, but you might want more. So what I would do is just flip that over. So in actual fact, you're beading this way. So when you get to when this grows big enough, it will just go off the end, but you'll still be able to keep beading on it. You just have to get used to the fact that you've got a weight that side, but it works exactly the same as the other. So to do our pattern, if we bring this in and assume we've done 2 rows, so we're now going to do this row, we want 3 beads of gold, 1 of blue and then 2 of gold. So we've got, first one we want 2 beads in, and we're going to pull those through, do our little shimmy stabilizer through there, then back down, not the one you came out of, but the one next door, and that should pull that bead into line. If not, just give it a helping turn over. There we go. If you need to, put your needle in and just encourage that bead into the right position. Every now and then you'll get one that doesn't want to sit. You put it in position and then it's perfectly happy. Pull that through and then we're good to go. So we wanted 3 gold. Back up. It's a very therapeutic stitch because you don't have to think technically about what you're doing. It's a very repetitious thing. So we're going to add our 1 blue and back up through the middle, and then our 2 gold. So the difference with doing the circular and the pattern is it's less clear where you're at when you're doing it. So you have to be slightly more aware, and you may have to just come back here and count. So we've got to the end of our row, and we're just going to go through the first one of the row and then back up through that last one, and now we're ready for the next row. So I'm now coming out of that last bead I did, which is actually that bead there. So we now want to do these going back. So we're going to put 2 on. But I can tell, so if I'm doing a pattern like this, I kind of read it from the blue. So I know where that blue is, the rest gold. I don't worry about which one of these golds it is, so long as I know where I'm at with that blue. So I know either side of that blue, I want to have a blue. So until I get round there, I'm actually not interested. So whether you go through that first one, and I'll do it with the first one this time, and show you, it just gives you a slightly different position. So it's 1 over position wise. So if I move that out of the way a bit, there we go. And then come back down there. As you get more proficient with it, you'll be able to just go straight through. When you start, you might have to go through that one and then through that one. It really doesn't matter. It's just practice, and you'll speed up naturally as you do it anyway. So we're going to go up through there, and then we're going to go round. So until we actually get to this blue, I want that one there to be a blue. So my next 2 are going to be golds. And I usually do about 1 centimetre, maybe another 1 or 2 rows before I'll take it off the mandrel. And it's easy. You can do it now. So this is going to be the last gold, but it's still quite small to hang on to, and it's all about making it easy. You can take it off now. It's not right or wrong. It's just what's easiest for you. There we go. And then I want the other one as a blue, and then my last one is going to be a gold. So when I take this off the mandrel, because I've forced my beading to be wider than it normally would be for me, this should be quite loose. So I'm going to come up through there and we'll have a look at that. Make sure that one's in that gap. The gap can look a bit tight, but it will fit. And back up through there. So we've finished 4 rows. We're going to take it off there. And that's what your tube looks like. You can put, if you want, some wire through there. You could put chain through there. You can use these as, you can make little bead sections that you could add on into a different type of necklace. You could put a leather cord through there. You can use these in so many different ways, with or without patterns. You can use the same technique to go around bead carriers. Which of course, again, you can do it circular and you've got the flat edge either side, so it makes it quite easy to do. As you can see, when you pick it up, it's actually still a little bit squishy, so you can squish it. It will firm up as you go around. This is more squishy than that one, because like I say, this is not my normal tension, so for me this is quite squishy. So keep going round until you've got the length you want. And then all I've done is butted ends together and literally stitch from one to the other, to the other, to the other, because you're flat edge to flat edge. So you can go just straight up and down through the beads all the way around, zigzagging round, and that will fasten them into bangle. Or if you want, put a bead cap on, or a kumihimo end on it and glue that on, or just fix a clasp. Any of those will do to finish. Like I say, I've just fastened these together, I've stitched that together so that you haven't got any clasp, it's just a complete bangle. And that's how you do your tubular peyote. We're now on to the next chapter. In this chapter, we're going to have a look at circular brick stitch. So as you can see, they're great for doing hoop earrings. It doesn't have to be a complete circle. You can do a complete circle. They're just another fun dimension to how you use this stitch. They're lovely. You can also taper, you can put a fringe on that. Again, you can do it inside the frame as well as going out of the frame. So we're going to look how we actually do it. So this is the one brick stitch that we don't do a traditional ladder to start off with. We're going to take some sort of hoop. You need some sort of hoop. It doesn't matter what it is. This is a large jump ring, but I could attach a hook to, or I could even put something on if I did all the way round. So we've got a hoop to start. We're going to tie a knot with our thread. Okay, so you want to leave a bigger tail than normal. So I'd say about a 10 plus centimetre thread end, because you'll want to sew that in afterwards. So we're going to pop that on the end. Okay, and then as per, we're going to pick up 2 beads, and I'm going to start with the blue, which is different to that. Okay, feed them down, and then almost as before, but you're coming through. Instead of going up and round, you're actually incorporating your hoop into it. So we're going to go through the hoop and then back up. So you're taking the hoop almost as a first layer, because that's then created and you can see the threads going across. I actually quite like that. I make a feature of it. You can try and blend it in with different coloured threads, but I actually quite like it. So we're still going to do the same. We're going to go down through that one, underneath, and up through there. Okay, so we've now got that nice and secure. We're going to pick up the next one, go underneath. Now you'll note I've put the bead on the needle, but I want it to stay on the outside, so it doesn't matter until you get to the end. So I then put my finger to stop it coming through, so that then stops on that side, and I can put my needle straight through. So it's as easy as that. If it comes up a bit, so you've got a gap, just pull it back up to the next one and then pull it. So we're going down, underneath, trap that bead that side, and then go up. It's quite easy to move the thread about and to move those about. So you can keep going like that all the way round. You can just do a complete circle round. You can make that into a just have one loop round, make that into earrings. You could incorporate that in with other things. You could put a gemstone in the middle of it. The possibilities again are endless. If it's a big enough ring, you can actually make a ring from it if you really wanted. So once you've gone as far round as you want to go, so I've swapped to the gold ones here. So I'm going to leave this because I quite like them with the open top. I just think it really focuses, but like I say, you can go all the way round. So what are the issues when you're doing circular peyote? What are the issues when you're doing circular brick stitch? Well, as you get further and further out, obviously these beads are going to go further and further apart. There are 2 things you can do. You can start with a small bead, so you could start with a 15 or an 11, then start with a 15, go to 11, go to an 8, go to a 6. So you can, because the natural size difference, it's going to eat up that space. If we have a look at the earrings, you'll see I'm just going to turn those round slightly. So you can see there's quite, if I put my finger behind it, can you see those gaps? I actually quite like that. It gives it a little bit more of a lacy feel to them. I'll turn that back round there. They don't like, they very much like to move, these earrings. Okay, so it will give you a different feel, but there's only so far you can go with that before the gap becomes too big, and basically you see your bead's going to fall through. So you have to decide, am I going to carry on with that, or am I going to go for a bigger bead, or am I going to increase? And by increasing, you're going to put 2 beads on each one, so you can actually increase as well. So once you've gone as far round with your base layer as you want to, we're then going to step up to the next level. So when you're stepping up, stepping up just means going up to the next layer. There are different ways of doing it. Obviously the circumference is getting wider, so while they're very tightly packed at the moment, the next row will be slightly further apart fractionally, and then the next row at that will be slightly fractionally wider again. Like I say, you can increase the bead size, you can accept that you're going to get some gapping, which is what I've done there because I really like the lacy effect we're getting from these earrings. And I've stopped at 3 and said, no, that's enough, that's lovely, I don't want to carry on anymore. But if I was going to put another layer on it, I'd probably go up to a size 6 bead. So stepping up to do your next layer. So I'm going to do it in the blue. Now the blue are a slightly smaller bead because they haven't got the same number of treatments as the gold. So I'm going to go in, now I want this to graduate, so I'm going to go in the second thread bridge, pull it up. You're still doing the same as you do for every other step up. You're going through into the layer below, back up and out through that first bead. Come on, sit on. There we go. And pull. Now you've got a solid lead. So, but this time I'm not going to pull mega tight because I know these are going to be slightly further apart. So I think you've got to accept and accommodate your style, which is what I've done. If you're a loose beader, then it's not going to be an issue. If you're someone like me who works on a tighter tension, then you've got to acknowledge that you're going to have gapping. So keeping my thread out of the way, tucking it there. We're just going in every one. You're now on standard brick stitch rhythm, brick stitch techniques. There we go. And you can see there you've got this slight, you can see the slight gaps that you're getting, and that's purely because these are a fraction smaller than those, only a fraction, but also they're going further around, because every time you add to the circumference, obviously that line, if you like, if you were to do that in a straight line, you're now having to fill it with more beads. Because we're not going all the way round, we don't have to worry about it meeting, because otherwise we would be probably a bead or so short. So once you've gone, again, you go as round as far as you want. I went all the way to the other side, and then I turned it round and did the same thing again, but this time I've gone back to the slightly bigger bead of the gold, which is still going to show gapping, and you'll really see that gapping happening now. So we're going to go down through to that next level. There we go. The reason I'm making sure I've got that gap on the first one is because I don't want to end up with that one tight and then all the others even more gapped. Okay, so we're going to see, and you can see if I put my finger there, take it away, you'll see where those gaps are happening. So you keep going round. I would suggest for something like this, you're just going to do 2. The bigger the circle, the bigger the gaps, because you're starting on a wider circumference. So the bigger the circumference of the circle you're going round, then obviously the bigger the gaps. So if we turn those round slightly again, there you go. You can see behind there the purple backdrop. But I think it's a nice lacy effect. So we hope you've enjoyed learning all about brick stitch with the JM Academy, and we hope you'll be back and join us soon.